thanks everyone for joining. My name is Vasiliki. I run Coimatan. It's a creative studio and think tank all about connecting small businesses with consumers. And today we're really excited to be hosting two panels, the first of which you're all here for, where we'll be discussing local economies and what small means and what small business means, primarily in the context of Minnesota and the amazing initiatives that we have here from the panelists that you'll be hearing from. So we'll get into that shortly. I just wanted to mention that we have part 2 at 10:45, so feel free to stay on. It'll be the same Zoom link. You can take a quick break and then we'll be back with another group of really exciting perspectives that will be highlighting the sustainability connection and what that means for businesses. And then tomorrow we're coming back with a coffee tasting really early in the morning to kind of kick off the Twin Cities Startup Weekday with two co-founders who run Curioso, and that'll be at True North Collaborative. And I wanted to also mention that we're running a giveaway. So this is a really exciting surprise. We partnered with To The Market, which is, if any one of you are familiar with the founder, her name's Jane Mossbecker Morris, and she actually spoke at Twin Cities Startup Week in 2018. And so her book, By the Change You Want to See, was really influential in my journey towards advocating for conscious consumerism. And so we've partnered with her and her company to gift 7 books to attendees from the 2 panels. And so if you've RSVP'd, then you're in the running for one of the books. So I'll stop sharing and then we can dive right in. I'm going to pass it on over to Michaela. Michaela's from True North Collaborative, and she is going to be the virtual host today since we're not in person. She'll be sharing a little bit about the space that we were going to be in.
Thank you, Vasiliki. Yes, just super quickly, we would have loved to have hosted you all in our studio space at True North Collaborative, which is in Uptown. This Delta variant just keeps getting in our way. So we're glad that Coimatan was able to step up and host this via Zoom. But I just wanted to share quickly that True North Collaborative is a partnership of local Minnesota brands that work hard to help bring joy to consumers and help them make ethical shopping choices. And we do experiential retail in hopes of building up the small business economy. So we're really appreciative to listen in today and hear the conversation. And we welcome you all to stop by. We're in the 7 Points building on Hennepin, just south of Lake Street. We've got studio rentals available, and we're going to be doing a lot of exciting programming in the coming months. So just wanted to say a quick hello and thanks so much. Wish you could be there in person, but looking forward to this conversation anyway.
You're on mute.
Okay, I knew that was going to happen at least once. We're not, it's been almost 2 years in the pandemic, but it still happened. So let's jump right in with introductions from the panelists. I'd love it if you could share who you are, who you're representing today, and then actually the meaning behind the name of your business. So why did you choose, and if you have multiple businesses, you can kind of give a introduction to each of them too. And Zoe, you can go last. So let's start with Audra.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Audra. I'm the founder and CEO of Rocky Robinson Self-Care for Girls. And I, created this brand during my time, started thinking about it during my time in corporate marketing, often being the only person that looked like me, and just wanted to create something that would empower particularly Black and Brown girls. And that's really how Rocky Robinson was born. It's self-care products, shower gel, lotion, lip balms, products that every girl loves, but really unapologetically celebrating Black and Brown girls, creating a sense of positive self-identity, good hygiene and routine, which all parents appreciate. And we're really happy to be on the call. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us. And the meaning behind Rocky Robinson?
The meaning, well, it's more of why I landed on that name. So originally I wanted to call my brand Girls Rock, and I had a trademark attorney that pushed back on me because there was an emerging business, I should say, or brand called Black Girls Rock, which was out of the East Coast, started by a DJ, Beverly Bond. And she was taking Black and brown girls out of New York City and taking them to camps and teaching them how to DJ and empowering them through DJing. Later on, she also partnered with BET to create a show of lots of Black women in the music industry, celebrating Black women in music. And so now, even today, and this is literally over almost 10 years ago, Black Girls Rock is literally like a rallying call. So maybe my attorney had some good foresight there, but I really dug my heels in. I wanted to be Girls Rock to represent what my brand was about, which was empowering girls to be all they can be. So Rocky is basically a derivative of that, and it's the name of, you know, the key kind of hero on our logo. And Robinson's my last name because literally I came from marketing background where I'd have an agency and a team that could help me with naming. When you're doing it yourself, it's on you. I had nothing else. So that's where I landed with Rocky Robinson.
That's awesome. That's a great name and a great story. Hayley, we can jump in with you next.
I'm Hayley. I'm the founder of Minneapolis Craft Market and Minneapolis Vintage Market. I feel like those names are pretty self-explanatory. You know, I one quick note on that is that I went round and round in circles for a long time before I named the craft market business, trying to think of something cute and funny and clever and cool, and then realized that that was actually delaying me launching my business. So I was like, let's go with generic. And SEO wise, it was a good move. Like we get a lot of traffic to our website just based on people looking for craft markets in Minneapolis, so, and vintage markets. So that's how that came about. And then I'm also the COO of the Get Down Coffee Company, which is a new company. It's a partnership between Houston White and Dogwood Coffee Company. And the name on that one, the story on the name on that one is a little more interesting than my businesses. It was basically a collaboration based around a shared love of music and coffee and culture. And the Get Down is kind of synonymous with the 70s and the 80s. And it's, as a brand, it's meant to symbolize this kind of mashup of disco, funk, hip hop, soul, cultural collision, everything all in one great bag of coffee. So that's kind of the story of that name.
Nice.
Oh, lots of fans of the Get Down. That's so
a lot of fans. It's also pretty early, so
yes,
everyone's thinking about coffee.
I'm drinking mine right now.
Oh, nice. What flavor, like what roast do you prefer?
I like turntables is my favorite. It's the kind of more full-bodied roast. We tend not to say dark roast because people often have a connotation around dark roast that, oh, that's too heavy or whatever. I find this one to be more flavorful than the drip drip, which a lot of people like as their everyday, but I like a more intense flavor. So turntables for me.
Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Bella, I'll pass it on over to you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say I love all of the panelists here. We're all from Lunar Startups, and they're just like my business besties. So happy to be on here with everyone. My name is Bella Lamb, and I'm the founder of Coconut Whisk and Coconut Whisk Cafe. We're a mission-driven vegan and gluten-free baking mix company based here in Minneapolis. And the story behind the name, I came up with a name when I was an intern in college. I was just about to launch my business, and I was playing with names and just words. And I came up with Lemon Whisk, and then that didn't really make sense because we didn't use anything lemon. And then I thought of Coconut Whisk because we use coconut sugar, coconut whisk, or coconut means the all-giving tree, and coconut also is a really big part of like my heritage. Like the desserts in Chinese and Vietnam culture is very like coconut based. And so that was kind of the play on the name. And I'm glad that it kind of rings and people like it. And now we still continue to use it, and it definitely makes sense for our products.
Nice. And Zoe?
Thank you. I want to echo what Bella said, which is like, what a power group of women to start our day with. Like, round of applause for all of us being here in this panel. Like, great, wonderful curation here. My name is Zoe Levin. I'm also known as the Toilet Paper Queen, aka founder and CEO of Bim Bamboo. We're a tree-free paper company based here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm in the North Loop right now, and our mission is to wipe away deforestation. I came up with the name Bim Bamboo because I wanted something that would make people smile. I wanted a brand that would bring joy. We're all about championing the planet and the people on it. And there's so many eco brands that are based in shame. For example, there's a great brand. It's like one of these like legacy brands called If You Care. It's like, if you care, you'll buy this. It's a wonderful brand. I love their products. I buy it all the time. But we kind of have this legacy culture of shame around sustainability. If you don't do this, bad things will happen. And I was like, screw it, let's have fun. So that's a part of how we came up with the name. It's fun to say.
I love it. Yeah, it's really fun, especially in an industry that isn't like, it's very traditional. So
Thank
nice.
you.
So I'll kick off the questions, and for the group of attendees, this is very open in the sense of drop in your questions at any point. If you're curious about something, if you'd like to learn more from a certain panelist, and we will hopefully get to them throughout the conversation. I'm going to start off with Audra. So Audra, your background is actually from corporate America. You talk a lot in your journey as a small business owner about the influence that Pfizer had on you and your layoff. Can you speak a little bit more to that and how that's influenced your business now?
Yeah, so it's funny. When you mentioned that you were laid off, people were like, oh, they feel sorry for you. But really, my layoff was an opportunity to really seek what was calling me, and that was my business full time. I actually launched Rocky Robinson back in August of 2014. And but I had started my role at Pfizer and really wasn't able to foster it and spend the time that the business needed. Within my time at Pfizer, we've gone through many reorgs, and the possibility of selling did not come as a surprise. They were really transparent about it. I was on the OTC business, over the counter. So I managed brands like Advil, Chapstick, Emergency. And I was a part of a team of about 11 who called on Target for business. So if you ever saw an Advil ad, buy it at Target, that was my work. And so I think one of the things that I definitely learned during my time at Pfizer is that, you know, there really is value in process and creating best practices. I would say what I bring to my business just in my overall career in marketing is research is so key, understanding who your target market is. I know a lot of times small business owners think that everyone is supposed to buy their product, but really you need to get as close as you can to who is going to make that purchase decision for your products. And then one of the things that I really take with me is marketing. That was that was my major in college, and just the art of marketing and telling stories, talking about the features of your brand, what differentiates you from anyone else in your space. One of the things about Pfizer is knowing who your competition is. I won't call out what those competitive brands were for Pfizer, but I think that's another piece that small businesses kind of think that, you know, they're the best. And I like taking on a Drake perspective, humble bragging sometimes, but you do need to know who your competition is, and also emerging brands within the space that you play in. I like to even call them brands that you admire, and then looking at what they're doing and how they're doing it and how you could potentially do it better, or, you know, respect the game and maybe even duplicate what they're doing, but with your voice. So that's really what I've learned during my career at Pfizer, as well as my marketing career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that all resonates. I came from GlaxoSmithKline, so
that's who bought OTC. GSK bought my.
Yeah, I was there at that time. That was about the time I left. One of those transition points, like you said, that happen in large corporations. Okay.
Small world.
Yeah, it's a small world. Hayley, I'm gonna kind of dive in next, and then I have a follow-up question, Audra, on something else you mentioned about kind of large corporations. But Hayley, you, I would say in Minneapolis, are really kind of this role model in my mind for creating something, bringing something new from somewhere else that you've seen it, and you've seen it done really well. And now on your third business, can you speak a little bit to how you've scaled, that? And then, yeah, how has it been as a business owner doing something really non-traditional and doing it well?
So yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar, Minneapolis Craft Market, I founded that business in 2015, and we pre-pandemic were doing around 120 events per year. So pop-up markets all around the Twin Cities featuring handmade goods by local makers and artists. And then we added the vintage market in 2018 with a similar format, but focused only on vintage goods. So we pop up a lot of breweries, distilleries, farmers markets, music festivals, things like that. And then with the Get Down, that has been a very rapid ascent business. Like, we are scaling quicker than almost we can keep up with, which is really exciting. A big piece of that, and a big piece of the difference of those two experiences for me, has been with the craft and vintage market. I was a solo founder. I had a little bit of admin help from one person, but primarily every decision was on me. Every bit of work was on me to fulfill. You know, the strategy, everything fell on my shoulders. And there's a part of me that likes that. I like having that control and the being able to bring to life exactly what I'm envisioning, but it can be really lonely as a solo founder as well. So it's a lot of pressure, and especially with everything that we're experiencing now with the pandemic, those are big decisions to make. You know, deciding whether to be open and how to safely be open is a very stressful decision as a solo business owner. Surviving the pandemic as a solo business owner is very stressful, especially when other people are kind of counting on you for a paycheck. And then, you know, the flip side of that, the Get Down, where we're kind of at with that right now is we launched on Black Friday last year. So we've not been open a year yet. We're 10 months old. We launched in Target this August. Our first cafe is under construction right now, and we'll open hopefully next month, fingers crossed. And where we're at with that is that we cannot keep up with the demand. So we launched in Target, we launched in 42 Metro stores. Every time I go into a store, it is not on the shelves. And we have doubled and tripled our order to our distributor, and we're producing as much as we can physically produce in the space. But we are at the point now where we need to add more physical space and more staff. So between the three of us, between Houston, Dan, and I think we make a great team, because I think Houston and I have a lot of similarities in mindset. We're both very big risk takers, both willing to take a leap in the dark. And Dan is definitely more cautious of the three of us, and that's really helpful sometimes, because Houston and I have a tendency to be like, let's do everything, and Dan is the one saying, well, hold on, let's see what we can actually do, you know. So it's a good balance of the three different two different personality types, I would say. And so where we're at right now is trying to I've been saying to a couple of things that most businesses are chasing the big contract, chasing the big deal, whatever that is, and trying to build up to that. Where we are is we're getting those contracts mainly through Houston's relationships and the work he has done building his network over decades, being a business owner here in the Twin Cities. And then we're trying to kind of figure out on the back end, okay, what do we need in place to make this happen? And so that's just like it's a completely different experience as a startup to be like not struggling for the demand, but but trying to figure out logistically what we need to add when to deliver. And so as the COO, that is really exciting and energizing to me. I really like the challenge. I come from a background in events, and so I've always worked in very fast-paced, project-based work, and that is very fulfilling to me. Like, I like the challenge of this high risk, high reward, big splashy, finishing event and then on to the next thing. And so I feel like I know that a lot of my fellow panelists have that kind of entrepreneurial risk-taking mindset. And I think that's something you do have to have a little bit of to start a small business in the first place, because it can be risky,
It definitely is. And I can vouch for your risk-taking and your kind of perspective of going after things and doing things and trying it out. Because we did the town hall for the first time ever, and you were so behind it, and you were like, let's do it and see what happens. Okay, Bella, I think you're an exciting addition to the panel group, because you have a brick and mortar space that is in a very kind of discussed area of town, and the kind of transformation of downtown Minneapolis and what it might become. And could you speak a little bit to that as being a small business within kind of the heart of larger businesses that we have here?
Yeah, I think it's such a privilege and an honor to be a small business right now. And I don't think of it as like a disadvantage or anything, because I know, like the Minneapolis Downtown Council, they're actually looking for small businesses and local makers to partner with in that area. And so I think customers and people in general are looking to support small businesses. So I've seen us do really well. And so it's not like a disadvantage, if that's the question.
No, it was more so like, how do you see your role in transforming downtown as a small business that's entered that neighborhood?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sorry about that. I am still waking up, clearly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say, I think us being a small business and being right on Nicollet Mall, it's definitely, I hope it inspires like other small businesses. I know there's actually a bar rooftop opening right next door to us, and the co-founder and the founder, they're both from MSU, and they're around 26, so they're young, they're local, and I think maybe seeing that we've had really good success this summer, it allows them to be like, okay, yeah, we can give this a shot, because downtown right now isn't the same as what it's been. So it's definitely something that the Downtown Council is working on, and other businesses are also looking into that area as well.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I can't wait for that. That'll be a nice compliment to what you're doing during the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Zoe, for you as a small business owner with Bim Bamboo, you speak a lot about how you've bootstrapped your business and built it from there. Do you want to share a little bit with the audience about what that experience has been like? Like how did you build?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really, really freaking hard. Really, one minute, I just want to give like a major shout out to Coconut Whisk Cafe. Like, if you haven't been there, like going back to the downtown thing, like we're also based downtown. And it's really interesting. I don't know if any, like, definitely drop in the chat if you've taken a walk around downtown recently, because it's weird. Like, I mean, we really need to be looking at how do we, you know, downtown used to be such a place of commerce for Minneapolis. And more recently, it was a place you went to party as well. And now it's like this, yeah, exactly. It feels empty. We do need more activity here. And I think Coconut Whisk is a great example in leading the way in a part of town that, like, we need a lot of, you know, we need more entrepreneurs to make that leap. And it's really hard to do when you're bootstrapping. You know, when you are making every dollar count, you're getting approached by VCs who are like, I see what you're doing. You're building an industry. I want a piece of the pie. And you're saying no. I think that's like the biggest, like, for me, I say no because the only way I would take anyone's money for Bim Bamboo right now is if they offered more than money. Like, I don't really care about your money. I am building something that it takes money to fuel it, but how I get that money and what they bring to the table is really, really important right now for our business. Our goal is to scale in a completely new fiber. Bim Bamboo is like the Charmin of the climate generation. So what we're doing is we are scaling tree-free fiber. And how we do that is incredibly strategic. Now, yes, we're based in the Twin Cities. Yes, we are local here. And this is, I think, maybe one of our biggest challenges. And I'm sure anyone building a brand here in the Twin Cities will have experienced this, specifically in CPG. You may be a locally based brand with a national focus. Like, we're seeing the Get Down Coffee go from a local brand with an incredible local mission. Minnesota is the place for innovation. Same with Coconut Whisk here, and soon Rocky Robinson. I mean, I think they just landed their first store in California. So, like, we're looking at these locally based brands that have a national impact. And that's something that we are an incredible hotbed for innovation ideas, but not getting stuck in this tiny perspective of what it means to be a localized brand is really important, because there are, in my case, only so many butts in the Twin Cities, and I do want to wipe them all. But we also need to be able to look at scaling so that we can innovate and pioneer a fiber that grows, you know, bamboo. It grows in 2 years. Trees take 35 plus years to come to harvest. We need to be looking at more sustainable solutions, not just in the Twin Cities, not just nationally, but globally, so we can really bring the level of sustainability to the climate crisis that we need to address it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's spot on. So going off of that question about how you, or that point about how you've really scaled and brought your toilet paper to as many butts as possible, there's a question from the audience about deciding between B2C and B2B. Is there someone from the panel that would like to talk about their experience and kind of how they've navigated that?
I had one clarifying question. Delon, could you please share with us what category specifically? Are you talking non-food or food? Hello, Delon.
You're on mute, Delon.
Whoops. Better?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I probably did. All right. Sorry about that. My roof is being replaced and I have kids, so there's a lot of chaos going on. We make a toy, so non-food. And we will probably do both B2B and B2C. We've tested both, so have demand from both. And I'm trying to make sure I don't fail by, you know, taking on more than we can chew. And so I'm wondering if any of you have perspective on how you started your growth, if you started in one and moved to another, or if you've stuck with one and continued, or whatever that kind of journey looks like. I think a lot of folks kind of fall into this chasm where they maybe try to get too big too quickly. And I'm trying to make sure that we don't do that. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying. Audra.
Yeah, well, I can say that as Bella mentioned, we're all a part of, the panel is a part of Lunar Startups, and we launched in March 2020. Our cohort started in March 2020. I did feel like I was probably the newest to the game with these ladies on the panel, and I would say, for me, it was important, I launched in DTC, and it was really important to get the fundamentals right on DTC. And then ironically with, March, and then, with literally within weeks of our cohort starting, we faced the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, and then even, election time and all those kind of disruptive moments within our history, and then particularly for business. So I wanted to really stay focused on getting DTC right. When I say I launched in March 2020, I launched on Instagram in March 2020, and then started working on my business full time. So I definitely saw a lot of explosion in my growth from launching on Instagram and really spending time shaping the voice and, who Rocky is and what we stand for from a brand perspective. The shift to B2B wholesale for me came naturally, one, because my sister has a beauty supply store in California in the Antelope Valley. So just from a strategic marketing perspective, it was always going to be important for me to land in my sister's store first. I am a marketer first, so that is a great story, and hopefully we'll have some media covering that soon. And there was a moment after we launched that we looked at each other and I was like, I think we may have made Black history. Like, you have a store, there's 9,000 beauty supply stores in the US, approximately 3,000 are Black owned, and that segment might even be smaller for Black women. So it was just a moment for my sister and I. But from the growth from here has really been through social media. So Girl Scouts has reached out to me. They have 6 retail stores here in Minnesota alone. They want to push it up through national to offer the brand for girls to shop with when they shop for their supplies for within their retail stores. And then I also got contacted by regions and Methodist hospitals for their gift shops, the channels that I didn't even think about at all. But it just so happens the regions gift shop is the top performing hospital gift shop in the nation, $1 million in sales. So they also want me in their store. So frankly, my B2B I did not initially think about it, but it came organically.
That's incredible, Audra. Huge congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Bella, would you like to speak too, given that you are in both categories?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit about our background with that. So I launched Coconuts in 2018, and I launched it to a really small audience. I had like a personal blog with like plant-based recipes and stuff. And so I launched it D2C. And then about a few months in, we got picked up by Hy-Vee, a few Hy-Vee stores in Mankato and the local area. And after that, we're like, all right, let's just expand into D2C and retail. And then it organically kind of grew into wholesale with subscriptions and just like little mom and pop boutique shops. And then the cafe was something that was never in the business plan, but just an opportunity that we thought was, really great to help with the revitalization of downtown. So everything really did happen organically, just like Audra said, and really getting the fundamental down in the beginning is super important so that you can have this like solid ground to grow and expand on, because like the worst thing is growing too quick, too fast. And we're experiencing some growing pains right now. So we're kind of pulling back a little bit and making sure everything is solid before we continue to grow and evolve our CPG side of things. So, yeah.
Going off of that question, Bella, and I know there's quite a few questions in the chat, so I promise we will get to them. Going off of what you just mentioned about growing pains, you have a co-founder. And I think Hayley mentioned as well, it's a little bit lonely sometimes starting something on your own. From your perspective, how would you say that you manage that? Like how do you divvy up responsibilities? How do you kind of complement each other in running the business?
Yeah, I would say first off, I respect solo entrepreneurs so much because I don't know how they do it. It's incredible. for Miles and I, we work best because we know each other's strengths and we really respect our decisions in those strengths. So like we can consult each other, we can, brainstorm, we can help each other out. But if it comes to like a decision that is our strong suit, then it's like we get the final say. So for example, I would have, I usually work on marketing and community building, sales, presentations, networking, and then Miles does a lot of like the logistics. So operations, inventory, what else? Finances. And so we kind of have our own separate lanes, and we just work together best when we stay in those lanes, and then help each other if needed. But that's kind of how we've been able to really to stay focused and sane.
Yeah. And do you have a team beyond the two of you? How have you hired to kind of go beyond that too, in the sense of doing more?
For sure. Yeah. So for the first 2 years, it was just Miles and I and one like part-time consultant, and then a social media manager. But since we opened the cafe, we have about 12 employees now. So they work at the cafe. And then for the CBG side, we have about 2 remote social media managers. And then we have a small manufacturing team. So about like 16 people now. And yeah, we were really strategic when thinking about hiring, because we wanted to make sure that we knew everything that was, we had to do everything so that we understood everything. But now we're pretty solid in that we understood how to delegate and hire on. So it took a while, but we're happy that we have a good team now.
Yeah, congratulations. You have a whole group there.
Yeah, it's a family.
Yeah, that's amazing. Going off of that, Audra, in the beginning, you mentioned that when you were at Pfizer, you could tap into all of these different other functions. And if you had a question, you could go to someone else that was in another department. Now, as a small business owner, we don't have that. We don't have a legal team. We don't have a marketing team. How do you navigate that? Is it local resources here? I would love to learn more.
Thanks for that question. Because transitioning from, the corporate side of business to small business has been really an interesting journey for me. And, one of the first things that I realized is that there are so many resources here in Minnesota to help you along your journey if you only do the research and if you only reach out. I was definitely fortunate to be a part of the accelerator. It was 12 months at the time. I think it's 6 months now, the current format, but it came at the right time. I mean, literally, I was laid off December 2019 and then found out that I was accepted into the cohort by January. And then we started in March. And so with that accelerator came a lot of resources, from legal help to even my peers who were much further along, who were able to give me advice from everything from, potential, packaging vendors to, creative options here in town. So I would say tap into the programs and resources. Look at the DEED website for support on small businesses. They have a lot of programs available. Look for accelerators, look for incubators, look for, there's organizations like the Social Impact Hub. They've been a great resource for me. I actually just met with Terry last week. She's a genius. And as far as I'm concerned, and just from our conversation, she started the idea of what social impact businesses should be and laid the foundation for that. I think sometimes when you're in corporate, you can often feel like, although there are resources, but it's this kind of battle to be on top. Whereas I found that being a part of the ecosystem here with small businesses, it's, so much support and resources, and folks are ready to extend and help. So I would just advise you just to dig and do the research and become a part of organizations that align with your small business.
And we're getting quite a few suggestions too in the chat, so I want to shout those out. So the cohort that you mentioned is Lunar Startups. It is coincidental that all of you are a part of that, but I think it just goes to show the acumen of that incubator. And then I Fund Women is something Bella's mentioning, and Hayley is recommending the Coven and Women Venture. And then the two that I would add on to that is DEED. So the Department of Economic Development, they do a lot of resource development and grants and things like that. They just announced
Sign up for their newsletter. Sign up for their newsletter if you haven't already.
Yep. And then the other one to mention is SBA. So they have a local group here, the Small Business Administration, which is a national organization. And they do a lot of kind of local advice giving about lending and about economic resources. So yes, they just opened today. Great. I have one final question before we jump into the questions from the attendees, which is really lovely to see. And then Impact SKU Accelerator, MEDA, Hands-on Twin Cities, and Next are other recommendations from Taylor.
And I do have to shout out Finovation Lab too.
And Finovate, yeah, there's so many. So that's
so many.
That's really great to see in this ecosystem. I think that's Bella, you mentioned that, right? Kind of all of the resources. And no, actually it was Zoe, you mentioned that this is a really great hub for emerging brands. So my final question before we jump into questions from the audience is about pricing. And I think the small businesses versus larger businesses, one of the main differentiators is in the pricing that comes out to consumers, and kind of the way that you can or cannot compete with all of the efficiencies and all of the procurement that goes on, and the contracts that, and investing even kind of more frankly, that goes behind larger businesses and the pricing that they can offer consumers, which drives a lot of Amazon buying and things like that. How do you navigate that? And how do you perhaps if your pricing is higher, how do you share the story of why it's higher? And if it's about the same, how do you navigate all of that in the economy?
I can chip in a little bit on that. The Get Down is definitely a premium product. So we're on the higher end of things, even in Target, where we are, is the place that you can find us the cheapest, because obviously they buy in such higher volume. We're still on the higher end of things on the shelf in there. And I think for us, it's really a focus on the quality. We're also like a market-driven pricing product. You know, we're pricing our products down to like individual cents based on the cost that we're incurring to buy the green coffee and everything. So I think a lot of people do look at that, and I can say that I was also one of them that would look at a coffee on the shelf and think, well, why is this one $15 versus this $5 one? And the simple answer is you can taste the difference. Like, it is that the focus for us is very much on product quality. It's on the storytelling, and also the education piece is huge for us. One of the focus points for us when we open the cafe is building a coffee brand that disrupts the industry. Specialty coffee is notoriously not welcoming or diverse, right? It's very white, let's just say it. It's a very white industry. And our focus is really on getting more people into it, having more people understand like that it's not it doesn't have to be a very off-putting, or unless I'm an expert, I can't even try that because I don't know where to start. And so our focus is going to be a lot on events and tastings and having these very like small group, deep touch point experiences. And I think that most of our panelists have done that in some way or another. That our strategy on that is that it's less about reaching 1,000 customers in target who may or may not know anything about us as a brand, and more on deeply reaching 10 people who are invested in us, who understand the importance of our business in Camden Town in North Minneapolis and what the story is behind that project. In a nutshell, it's essentially the Get Down Cafe will be the cornerstone business in this new project by Houston to completely revitalize the Camden Town neighborhood and make it a destination of Black-owned businesses. And how do we build a neighborhood that is thriving, even though it's been historically disinvested? And so there are those reasons. There's the meaning behind our brand that resonates with so many people, that they want to support it because it is just bigger than a coffee brand. It's not just slapping a name on a generic product. It's so much bigger. And so I think through that combination of the storytelling and the meaning, and being a business that is actually standing for something bigger than just transactional sales, that's been consistent in both of my other businesses as well. Like it was always about more than just having an event and making money and people selling a product. It's about giving customers the opportunity to, like our tagline is meet your maker for the craft market. Like it's connecting, making those connections, educating consumers on why is this product, why does it cost more? Well, because hours and hours of hand labor went into making it, and here's the person who did that. And so, yeah, for the Get Down, it's we know that our prices are higher than lots of other brands, but the quality speaks for itself, and the mission behind the product. We're not just in it for cashing out and getting as much as we can. It's building a foundation for something so much bigger.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to see that in Camden Town. The coffee shops are a lot of times the heart of a neighborhood, so that'll be a really exciting addition.
And there are no other cafes in that neighborhood for 1.8 miles, whereas other areas of Minneapolis, you can stand on a street corner and see 4 cafes from where you're standing. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to share their story around pricing? And
I'll pop in here. If you asked me this question, I don't know, 2 years ago, I'd be like, I give a pretty straightforward answer. Now, what no one in our panel is naming, that I'm sure every one of these panelists and all the attendees here are experiencing, is incredible stress on our supply chain. We are having problems as makers, as founders, figuring out where to get bottles, where to get bags that our product goes in. So even if we're able to source a specific material, there may be one ingredient right now that is absolutely, it becomes a bane of our existence. We're like, like Bella's probably like, man, if I could just get that boba, like the bubbles that go in the bubble tea, that is so delicious, by the way, like I would be able to sell so many of these. And it's funny, I wrote Kai Rizdal at Marketplace last week about this. I was like, because they have a section all about like the economy right now. And I was like, the economy is booming. The problem is the infrastructure to support the booming economy is crumbling. And that is something, when it comes to pricing, it's ultimately, it is the consumer who is going to be eating that. Even with major VC funded and backed companies, there's only so long that they're going to allow you to be unprofitable. So there's either 2 ways this is going to go. Either founders are going to figure out how to charge more for their product and be able to actually pay their bills and make a living, or they're not, and they're going to cash out at the end. So there's two ways this is going to go, but there's no way there's going to be something in between right now. So like in my industry, for example, I saw someone ask a question about this in the chat earlier about COVID-19, how it affected our sales. Of course, like, yeah, like our sales were absolutely crazy last year, and we're headed into yet another paper shortage. So this is, I think, the most volatile place we've ever been regarding supply chain and supply and demand as effective supply chain. And that is ultimately creating more volatile conditions for the market because you're going to get more out of stocks. You're going to get higher demand. You're maybe going to have more gap suppliers or selection on the shelf than we've ever seen before. So in some ways, I think it can be a good thing. And in some ways, I think it can be a really, really challenging thing right now. And pricing is just one part of that.
Yeah, that's spot on. Would anyone like to add?
Yeah, I would say, especially for me being so new and launching in March and really driving my brand, what I saw really early was an issue with the supply chain and particularly with components. And I, at the time, was buying my raw ingredients and then mixing bottle, label, packing, shipping from home, one woman show. And so it forced me to invest more of my money in the ingredients and the components than I had planned, out of, fear and concern that now when I get to fourth quarter, which is going to be a key selling season for me, that the products might not be available. Because even with launching in March, by May of last year, there were products that weren't going to ship to me for 6 months. So thankfully this year I was able to move and offload production. So now I have a local blender that does all of those things for me. And so they're able to buy in bulk, get cut in pricing as well. And I feel a lot better this year than I did this time last year.
Is there research that, like, how do you figure out who to buy from? How do you learn about different suppliers? Like, how do you navigate local supply versus like buying from some other place? Zoe, you're laughing, so feel free to.
Well, because this is like one of those questions. It's like, if I tell you, I'll have to kill you. Like, okay. It's like, you can't, like, everyone's like, this is like the most top secret, because this is right now, if you can do this, you can succeed. So how you get your, it's kind of like, I can say that, we, out of all the makers here, we currently import our raw materials here and we make our product. We're in the transition of making our product domestically. So, because we're dealing with like, literally a $21 billion industry that we're trying to break, which is it is the largest, it is huge, it is incredibly capital intensive. For us to make our product here requires a very different set of like strategy, basically, for us to do that. So how I answer this question will be from an international perspective. And I know that there are some international components in our, our panelists' products and their amazing lines that they all carry, but ours is very specific to this, where like we are, right now we have a tariff come from China. We buy our product, a raw material, from Bamboo Grove, a privately managed bamboo FSC certified grove in China. And we bring that over via boat. And that is, the lowest carbon footprint way to transport goods right now is by boat. And then we bring that to America, and we are in the process of figuring out how to source these other components that go into our product here. And there's this very interesting thing right now where there's something called a bill of materials. And your bill of materials is you looking at a spreadsheet with a bunch of numbers that breaks down every single thing it takes to make your product. And that bill of materials is ultimately, when you're getting quotes from vendors, that's what you're plugging in. the majority, I know that everyone in this room can speak to what it means to, you know, in the middle of a panelist series like this inside a cohort meeting at Lunar, being like, hey, so I noticed that you launched a major soap company. Could you tell me what co-packer you use to do that? You know, like this is a lot of that word on the street where it's grabbing a coffee with someone and, you know, demonstrating your relationship. And, you know, it's not like it's a secret, but you really need to be careful because you could either be giving your competitor a major advantage to when you answer this question, or you could be shooting yourself in the foot where all of a sudden your co-packer or someone you may want to contract with gets a bigger opportunity, a bigger deal, and they're going to go to them. So you have to be very careful about sharing some of this.
And I mean, and coming from the CPG world, the reality is that you can be unapologetic and not share the information. A lot of times it's proprietary to your brand. It's proprietary to the products that you make and sell. So, but the core of your question was, how do you get at that information for those suppliers? And Google was my friend. I mean, that's how I came across, you know, the suppliers for the ingredients that I was looking for. Also asking questions. So to solve my issue with offloading production, because Zoe mentioned it, I haven't found a co-packer. I haven't found a manufacturer yet. One of the reasons why, and it's a struggle when you are a small business, is MOQs, minimum order quantities. You're up against that when you are dealing with manufacturers. There's several in the Midwest who are probably key players for many of the products that you see on the shelf, beauty products, personal care products. However, when I called them, one SKU might be a minimum of 10,000, right? So, you know, they're serving the Targets of the world. They're serving brands that, you know, some of those brands that are private label that are buying large quantities. And also when there is a supply chain issue, that's who's going to get the business first, not Audra in her basement. So what I would say is Google's your friend. And then I came across my solution, which is a blender, because the printer that I was using for my labels, you know, I just asked, it's like, he's probably doing business with other brands in Minnesota. There's so many innovative businesses in this space, be it on the food side or beauty. Do you know of anyone who I might be able to work with? And he gave me the name. I called, and it's been the best thing that's happened to me. So ask the questions and do a lot of Googling and listen. So some of the sources that I got, I was on Zoom calls that were with other businesses in my space, and also podcasts. And sometimes people slip and say the name of their manufacturers, and I was taking notes. So that's another source.
Yes, no need to tell us who your suppliers are. That's not that kind of panel. So I will jump into questions from the audience. There's one from Nalini, who is from Yoga Pops, and she's asking any grants and opportunities that any of you can help us promote our artisanal CPG or brick and mortar business. And Michaela would also love to learn more about that.
I think we kind of covered this before. If we scroll up in the chat, there's like
all those
an incredible set of resources, you know, that we kind of brainstormed between, you know, if you wanted to do a fundraising campaign, for example, similar to a Kickstarter, I Fund Women is a great resource. I know that Bella has launched an incredible campaign with them. Deed grants, Impact SKU. I mean, there are grant opportunities. I think one thing to keep in mind is, like, definitely before you go this route, have your business priorities outlined, your goals, what you need, how you're going to define success year 1, 2, and 3. Get your business plan together. Have a P&L and a balance sheet. They're going to ask you for it. It's very similar to, you know, your elevator pitch. Like, you should, if you haven't approached these organizations yet and you're interested in doing that, I guess I would pose that to some of the other players here on the panel because I haven't actually got any grants. I just self-funded, so it's a little bit different, but I'm going to open this question up to others here and see how they, if they're able to share.
Yeah, I can chime in on this. So we're also bootstrapped and we haven't taken on any VCs or investors, and how we've been able to fund most of our projects is obviously through like customer revenue, but also looking at like unconventional, I guess, channels for grants. Like we won a ARI grant and an American Eagle grant, and it was a lot of just writing and applying. And so definitely looking into that and just being active on either social media, LinkedIn, and just, keeping your network open so people can refer you to them and get those opportunities through that.
So a couple that are mentioned in the chat and I'm referencing them since this will be recorded for people after. People are mentioning Minnesota Cup, Hello Alice. There's also a mention of ThomasNet for suppliers, supplier research. Are there any other questions from the audience? If you would like, feel free to unmute yourself and share away.
Hi, can you guys hear us okay?
Yep.
Hey, so first off, we're newbies and relative newbies in Minneapolis, but we've just been commenting while everyone's been presenting how amazing this panel is. Yeah, I mean, really, we moved here also from Florida, from Tampa, Florida, and we could not be more delighted to be in Minneapolis. So we're so happy to hear about everything you guys are doing with your businesses. Just one quick question. Just very brief context. We ran a business in Florida, and so we're coming from the entrepreneurial world. And one of the biggest challenges that we had, and that we're facing even now as we try to start a new business in Minneapolis, is the time that we're investing in setting goals, be they financial goals, revenue goals, sales goals, customer acquisitions, all that stuff, especially at the early stages of a business. And the truth is, even having done this before, any goal we set, we feel is always way off. You set a budget for the year or something, and then it's just by the end of January, we feel we're miles away from it. And I was just wondering from this group, if anyone has any good resources that they're using, particularly for setting their goals for, however far in the future you're doing it, say 6-12 months out, and then tracking your progress against those things, whatever those metrics are for you, but doing it so that it's not in Excel and taking forever to do. If anyone has anything on that note, that would be hugely helpful.
If I'm hearing your question correctly, you're asking if there's basically a data hub that you could use to calibrate metrics, analytics regarding your business optimization, processes, sales.
Yeah. So from your standpoint, are you doing this stuff currently? Our default is to do it in Excel, but I'm just wondering if there's a better tool that you've found out there that you've used and you think is reliable and good.
Right now, we have retrofitted Monday.com as our hub. Now, that being said, incredibly robust capabilities. Do you have to hire a programmer to help bridge some of these data points? Absolutely. Does that cost a significant amount? Yes. I mean, significant. Let's talk about that. That means for us to customize Monday was over $12,000. So for us, that's a significant cost. For some businesses, that's oh, that's nothing. For us, we're that could have paid somebody. So I think there's a scale thing to talk about here too. Now, I know that there are some very interesting things happening with QuickBooks, I'm not sure, or there's another one. Xero is another accounting app. I think a lot of this and can also plug in with CRMs. So depending on what industry you're in, if that's CPG specific or not, or if that's service industry based specific or not, one thing that I find really helpful for this is legit, no judgment, back of the napkin math.
Yeah.
A whiteboard, my iPhone calculator, which is honestly shit. Everyone here, just buy yourself a real calculator. It will last you an entire lifetime. It's solar powered. You never have to put batteries in it. And it works. It doesn't like, you don't get notifications. It's great.
You can make graphs.
Yeah, you can make graphs. It's like, but like, you know, I sit there and I'm like, okay, how many units a day do I need to sell to reach this goal? And then it becomes a question of marketing. How many dollars do you think we would need to get there? Like, we're at a stage though, and maybe you're struggling with this too, where we haven't invested much in marketing. That's not something that's a big line item on our budget. So for us to figure out, for example, getting back to Delon's D2C question or B2B, guess what is the most marketing intensive? D2C. So for us to be able to be like, well, if we want to grow D2C, how many dollars is it going to take? That's still a big question in our book. So we are beta testing different programs so we could figure out, like, what does it cost? Because we haven't done some of that math yet, but at least the back of the napkin math will get you out of that spreadsheet doom. And Monday, although it does require a significant amount of maintenance, whether or not you do an out of the box version or a custom built version that is really fancy and has all kinds of integrations, I do feel that that is a really great place to let things live outside of a spreadsheet that's living, breathing. And if you bring in contractors, for example, you can have them plugging in data into that in a more robust, capable way than a spreadsheet may be able to accommodate, where, like, you know, you're just sitting on Google Drive, and if you open it, good for you.
Hoping somebody doesn't break it. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you, Zoe. Really appreciate that.
But I'm curious if anyone else has anything to add there, because. No.
I'll just chime in. So this is something that I've struggled with too. I'm in a very different business. Like I come from an events background, but one of the things that was most helpful for me to kind of get out of the spreadsheet doom that you mentioned, Zoe, was when I'm setting my annual goals, I set them and then I break them down by quarter, and then I break them down by month. And then I just have some key, KPIs that I need to meet each month to kind of reach those goals. And I just take one afternoon a month to see, did I meet them? Did I not? Am I on track? Am I not? Do I need to change my goals because the world shut down? And that's how I stay sane, because the longer I stare at my screen, the more brain gets fried. But
yeah, that's really helpful. And so you try to limit the time that you spend on it to once, like one afternoon a month ish, right? Yeah, and I feel like we probably tell ourselves that that's the we spend on it, but it creeps into sometimes more significant than that. But that's super helpful. Thanks for sharing that, Michaela.
Of course.
Yes, Nalini, feel free to jump in.
Hey, I know some of you are already in places like Whole Foods. Hi. And I wanted to check with you, is it worth it? Number one, of course it gets the word out there, but how do you even, scaling is one, but how do you keep yourself afloat when they want all your money and the distributor takes the rest of it? So what's the logistics and how's it worked for you?
Nalini, I'm still figuring that part out. So
This is for you,
I just had a meeting with them and they were like, I just about pooped my pants. They were like, so just to let you know, it's going to cost 40 grand out of pocket. You can write that check on this date. And I was like, wow, this is what, when we talk about gatekeeping in this industry, when we talk about the lack of diversity at shelf, when we talk about what it means to build a brand that is pioneering a new category like Yoga Pops is. I love your product. But it's really a huge challenge because you're up against an industry that was built specifically for brands that have the ability to write a giant check. I was in a meeting with Unilever last week. on the call with Whole Foods. So that's like when we're talking about what we're up against, you know, that may be Lay's in the future, like Frito-Lay. Or yeah, like that might be, you know, we're looking at where are we leaning in? So the questions that I learned this from Monica Nassif, who is the founder of Caldrea and Mrs. Myers. Props, Monica Nassif. Ask this question. Whenever they're like, slotting's gonna be 40 grand, be like, we are so excited to be a fantastic partner to insert retailer name here. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your diversity supplier and inclusion efforts. Do you have any flexibility on slotting fees or marketing programs for women and BIPOC brands? I'm so interested in hearing how you're helping build diversity at shelf. Put it back on them. We get paid less as women. And if you're coming from a BIPOC background like I am, I'm Indigenous. This is, you know, like I'm Native, and this is, we experience so many challenges and they are not named. So guess what? We have the labor of naming that in places where no one else is doing it. And it comes from the vendor themselves asking that question to the retailer. So if you're looking to scale, I mean, like this is one of those at the distributor level, you're just probably SOL. But when it comes to the retailer level, you should be able to negotiate there. Now the rest becomes a really, really strong game in accounting. Get a great accountant.
Also true. But how long have you been with Whole Foods now?
Almost a year.
Oh, that's it. Okay, so
yeah.
you're still going through the
I'm still figuring it out. Like I'm not sure. And you know, it's just like, I don't know. We'll see if it's we'll see what the true ROI is. And I think that really depends on, you know, your goals for your brand and your company. Are you looking to build a brand and sell it? Are you looking to build a brand and sustain a living for you and your family over a very long period of time? Those kinds of questions, getting your ultimate, you know, 5-year, 10-year plan together about what you want for your brand will help dictate those moves, because it costs a fortune. You know, there are so many stories I have heard about brands that are Minnesota based that went national, you know, major CPG brands that were not profitable until they sold to a major player and were able to get rolled into their admin and operations. So do not believe this myth that you get into Whole Foods and everything's gravy and it's wonderful from there. You are spot on with your gut and where this question came from, which is how do you make sure that you are, you know, what is the true ROI is really the question I would ask you to answer for your brand of having that kind of placement.
I love that response. It's also like, you know, I used to work for Target donkey years ago, and the logo is expect more, pay less. Well, they expect more from their vendor and then they pay you less. That's what it is. And really, I mean, if you look at across the whole buying, and I was a buyer and I left it because I was going from vendor to vendor with a golden bowl, begging bowl, asking for money for everything. So it just, I mean, as somebody from developing countries, where I had seen sweatshops being created as a result of those begging bowls, because somebody at the end will be impacted by your wanting it cheaper. So absolutely agree with that we have to change the mindset of the buyers when we can impact them.
Mm-hmm. I think that goes back to the topic today, which is building back the block, and the importance of, you know, supporting small businesses and local businesses. And Nalini, you make a great point. The business I worked on with Pfizer, which was OTC brands, and it was $150 million business at Target. And I think that's another perspective that I was able to bring to this side of business is, you know, if Emergency can't afford to be on the shelf and have placement within eye level, or that they only have 6 to 8 weeks with their new innovation to drive a certain amount of sales before they're kicked out and having to pay, because you can get on shelf and then you pay for markdowns, you have to buy back the product if it doesn't sell. You know, it's a lot that you need to achieve, and I think it's a beautiful accomplishment to be a small business and make it to retail shelves. But you also have to understand the proposition, as Zoe said, and what it takes to be there, and also to sustain, because I've seen it from, you know, being on a multi-million-dollar business, billion-dollar brands, that it can easily put you out of business as well if you don't know what you're doing, and if you don't already have the built-in following that, frankly, when the retailers do select you, they expect you to drive, they expect you to have the cachet, the demographics that they're looking for to bring into the store. So if you don't have that yet, it could be an uphill battle and maybe even put you out of business.
Are there any other lingering questions from the audience? We have a fun surprise at the end. So any other questions? It has been a very transparent conversation. I will agree with Taylor. So thanks so much to the panelists for sharing about how they've done what they've done, the challenges that they've encountered, where they would like to go, and then how they're doing that together with each other too, and how we can work together to be stronger and to kind of navigate those powers, like Zoe, that you're mentioning, all that gatekeeping, like how can we together bring a more powerful force to be able to enter some markets and reach some consumers with a more local product. So on that note, let me share my screen. So we have a really fun surprise from Zoe and her team for all of you. Can you see my screen? So Zoe and her team are offering all attendees today one free roll of Bim Bamboo toilet paper. So there's 2 ways that you can claim your roll. You can enter free roll at checkout on, what's the website, Zoe? bimbamboopaper.com, or is it just bimbamboo.com?
Yep, bimbamboopaper.com. Otherwise, I'm going to drop this link into the chat. It will literally add it to your cart and you go straight to checkout if you want to skip the checkout line, the whole like perusing process. So.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Zoe. Thank you to all of the panelists. It's been a huge pleasure to hear about your businesses and your stories. And I want to encourage everyone on the call to connect with each other and to keep the conversation going about how we can build back local economies. Stay tuned for Get Down Coffee in Camden Town. And I would encourage you to go visit Coconut Whisk Cafe in downtown Minneapolis. Twin Cities Startup Week, I will mention, has a lot going on downtown. A lot of their events are in the IDS Center, which is right next to Coconut Whisk. So stop on by and support both this week. And I will close it off there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much for joining.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Good seeing you, Lunar ladies, again.
Yes.
Audra, you're amazing, by the way. We're definitely going to connect with you.
Please do.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. See you.